When I decided to move from the US to Italy, I only gave myself 2 months to plan and organize everything. And it did end up working out, but there were a lot of problems I had that probably could have been avoided. So if I were to plan my move abroad all over again today, here are 3 things that I would do differently. Number one, I'd assume that everything will take at least twice as long as I expect it to. And I don't mean just the planning process. I knew settling in a new country wouldn't be easy, but I really underestimated the time it would take to become fluent in the language, meet people and make friends, and just adjust to a whole new lifestyle. And this is especially true for something that you may have a lot of experience with, but you just don't know how the process works in your new country. So there's a big learning curve, like looking for housing. I did some research on the housing market in Turin before I left the US, but it takes time to understand how the whole renting process works. When I arrived in Italy, I had just 1 month booked in an Airbnb. I thought at most I would have to extend it for about 2 more weeks. I assumed that 6 weeks would be plenty of time to find a permanent place, but it ended up taking me 3.5 months. I was very confident in my ability to find a place because I had found apartments in some of the toughest rental markets in the US, including San Francisco and LA. So part of the reason that it was so difficult was the timing. So I arrived in August, which is the month that a lot of Italians go on holiday and most businesses shut down. So that includes realtors and agencies and people who are renting apartments. But I also underestimated how much of an impact mistake number 2 would have on my ability to find a permanent place to live. The second thing I would do differently is have more of a backup plan for my income. Yes, I was unemployed when I moved, which I don't recommend, but I was qualified to teach English and I knew I could get a job pretty quickly. But I wasn't too sure that the salary I could make teaching would be enough to support me. I thought it would take only about a month to get hired, and it took about 2, which is not that bad. But that delay made it harder for me to find an apartment because even though I had a lot of savings and I was willing to pay 3 or 4 months of rent up front, most landlords still would not rent to me because I didn't have a source of income, which is understandable. And that savings I had that I thought would give me such a good cushion, I had to spend a lot of it when I moved into my new apartment. Even though the apartment was furnished, I had to get bedding and dishes and kitchen stuff and just all of the things that you need to buy to make your house livable. So obviously having an income in place before I arrived would have taken a lot more stress off of my financial situation. It could have been avoided if I had taken a lot more time to plan the move, then I could have started freelancing before I left. I got a job quickly, just like I planned, but the real issue came when I lost that job less than a year later. That's when I realized that not having a backup plan was really dangerous. My plan was to start freelancing and have 2 jobs, but when I got the teaching job, I was just enjoying being in Italy and adjusting to everything that was. It was really hard to continue that US mindset of, okay, I need to keep working, I need to stay productive, I need to have a backup plan. So when I lost the job, it was my school closed down very suddenly, but I hadn't really ramped up my freelance business. And I suddenly found myself scrambling to try to get more freelance work as soon as possible. It was actually hard to get clients based in English speaking countries because when you sign up on sites like Fiverr and Upwork, they use your location to find clients. Most of the freelance work that I was doing was in English. So it was a little bit harder to build up my client base and to start getting freelancing work because I was already in Italy. So if I had to do it over again, I would have started to ramp up my freelancing work before I left the US. Even if I wanted to start teaching English, I think it would have been a good idea to have that backup freelance income some kind of income before I left the US. I know that sounds probably obvious to most of you, but this was a mistake I made. So if you're planning to leave the country and just hope to get a job when you arrive, just know that it can work out. It worked out for me, but it can be stressful if it doesn't. So I wouldn't recommend it. If I had had more income in place before I left, then I would have been able to get a permanent place easier, and I would have not had to use all my savings when I arrived. I should have known it was a huge risk to move to another country without a solid backup plan. But moving abroad itself is just one big gamble, which leads me to the third thing I would do differently. I would actually keep or store more of my things back home for a few reasons. As good as it felt to downsize my life into 2 suitcases, I didn't realize that the stuff that you accumulate over your lifetime kind of defines who you are. And if for some reason my move didn't work out and I had to go back home, it would have been overwhelming to have to rebuild everything from scratch. And it was important for me to have fewer things with me because I didn't have a place to live yet, and I was traveling with my cat and all of the stuff that goes along with that. And I realized later that a lot of the stuff I got rid of, I had to rebuy over again when I could have just stored it somewhere and brought it over little by little every time I went back to visit. Of course, I had to rebuy a lot of my electronics and appliances like this Instant Pot because the voltage is different here in Europe. But I really do wish I had kept more of my book collection. I've started a new collection, of course, but I wish sometimes that I would have attempted at least to ship over some of my favorites. The longer that I'm gone, the more I crave old photos and letters that I just let go. I know that I'll create more memories, but a lot of sentimental things can't really be replaced. So I'll admit, my plan to move abroad was probably a bit rushed. But if I had stopped to think about it, then maybe I never would have gone in the first place. I could have made a much longer video listing all of the things that I would do differently, but sometimes it's more about intuition than logic. I still think I made the right call, even if it was a bit of a gamble. If you're in the planning process of your move abroad, you will make mistakes. There's no getting around that. But if you watch this video, then I hope you don't make the same mistakes I did. And if you're looking for more tips for the logistics of moving abroad, watch the next video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.